Welcome to the 100th episode of the Two Stewards Show. Thanks for supporting us so far. There is a belief that AI will eventually rule the world. Our guest today is here to laugh that idea to scorn. He has been involved in the field of artificial intelligence since 1998. He is head technologist at InDivumed Therapeutics oncology treatment, researcher at State University of New York, philosophy of AI, complex systems, ontology of physics and math, senior research associate at the University of Buffalo, guest professor at University of Lugano, co-author of the book, Why Machines Will Never Rule the World. His name is Jobst Landgrebe. And after speaking with Jobst, Mark and I have come to understand that we are both simple systems. That is a technical term in the field of AI that means our brains can't keep up with someone who has been studying AI for more than a quarter century. Thankfully, Jobst takes us through the very basics. Recognizing patterns, simple versus complex systems, the suspension of reality, Cartesianism, Eugenics, Transhumanism. If machines are going to rule this world, they've got their work cut out for them. And trust me, by the end of this episode, you will be a complex system, or like me, have an inferiority complex. Go check out Jobst's book, Why Machines Will Never Rule the World. The second version is set to be released in May, and if you've enjoyed even one of the past 100 episodes, go rate the show with 5 beautiful stars. Helps us grow the show and serve more beautiful people. And to get in touch, email us at hello@twostewards.ca. Remember, this show is not financial advice, but it is valuable for listening amusement purposes. And now, Jobst Landgrebe.
Hello, folks. Welcome to the Two Stewards Show. My name is Mark. I'm your host, and I'm here with Brent.
Hello, Mark.
How you doing, Brent?
Yeah, I'm good. I got my mic plugged in this time.
Hey,
We're ready
okay,
to go.
that's always a plus. It's the little things. And today...
This is also our 100th episode, though.
Oh,
so
really?
Special one, very special.
Oh, okay. Happy. So just like a man, I didn't know. And congratulations, Brent.
Yeah, I was going to surprise you on our 100 episode anniversary.
Well, let's make it like we planned this. So for our 100th episode, we wanted to have on an expert in AI. I mean, I wanted to have him on anyways, so this works out very well. But we have Jobst Landgrebe from all the way from Germany. Welcome, Jobst.
Good evening or hello. Good day. Nice to meet you. Thanks a lot for inviting me.
Yeah, we're glad to have you on. You've been in my crosshairs for a little while, so very happy to have you here. So I'll just introduce you to our audience quickly, so they know that you maybe know what you're talking about. So you work. You're the I can't remember what you do. You're head technologist at InDivumed Therapeutics, which does oncology treatment. So that's cool, and we can. You can maybe dig into that a little bit more. You're also a researcher at the State University of New York. So what I was able to dig up was the philosophy of AI, artificial intelligence, complex systems, and the ontology of physics and math. So a lot of big words that I'm not familiar with. Senior research associate, University of Buffalo. And then also you've been teaching at University of Lugano since 2019. And you've been studying and researching artificial intelligence since 1998.
Correct.
And I did not know about artificial intelligence in 1998, other than what I've seen in the movies, which was nothing. So, I mean, this is before... I don't know. How did you get into that? Finally, I'll just mention, you also have a book out, which is a big reason we wanted to have you on as well. And it's Why Machines Will Never Rule the World. And that was co-authored with Barry Smith. But and we will certainly dig into that. But why would you get into artificial intelligence in 1998, Jobst?
Because I created a data set, which was at the time in biological research, which was at the time, it was before the human genome got finalized. And so it was one of the biggest single data sets at the time. And I was measuring 20,000 genes and their variants, so 30,000 genes in hundreds of mice from brain tissue. The expression of those genes, and I obtained a huge table of data. And at the time, I hadn't studied mathematics. And so I just had studied medicine and biochemistry. So I went to mathematics department at the place I was working, which is Max Planck Institute, and asked the mathematicians what to do with this. And then I started working on this and realized very soon that I needed to study mathematics. And so then I started using AI methods and studying mathematics. And that's how I basically got into AI, because the methods to analyze such big data, you always need mathematical methods, which are now called AI, though they have nothing to do with artificial intelligence. It's a marketing label.
Okay. So what was your original course of study and focus of work?
Yeah, I started medicine and biochemistry and went into neuroscience. And then I stayed in neuroscience and studied mathematics in parallel. Then I moved out of neuroscience into cell biology, which is a bit simpler than neuroscience. I gave up on neuroscience because I thought it's unsolvable. It's a matter that is too complicated for humans to solve. So I left it. And then I stayed for another 4 years in cell biology. And then I basically left academia in 2006 and went into the private sector. And there I've always worked in applied AI, basically, since 2006.
But you also have a strong background in philosophy. I don't know if you've studied that or if that's just a passion of yours.
I studied it. So I come from a philosopher family. My grandfather, Ludwig Landgrebe, was the last assistant of Edmund Husserl. So I come from a family of philosophers, and I also studied it and spent a lot of time in my life. I published a lot on philosophy. So yes, I'm also a philosopher, and in Lugano I'm teaching theory of science, which is a philosophical discipline.
Okay, wow. And you've got, you also have a long line of, I guess, Lutheran ministers in your,
So my mother is a Hochstädter. So the Hochstädters are the family, the German nobility family with the highest number of reverends ever in the whole history of German Lutheranism. So my parents are both actually Lutheran reverends.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Even my mother, though she didn't practice it, but she also studied theology and has a master in Lutheran theology. So it's also one of my hobbies. And it's actually very important. I practice it every day.
Wow. Okay. That is, so, I mean, I'm just thinking for myself, I was a cable installer many years ago, and then I learned, a little bit about framing, and I learned some plumbing and carpentry and I was a little bit proud, like, wow, I learned all these, but then you're like, no, well, I did, neuroscience, but that was kind of boring, so I got into philosophy and
No. All the things that you learned, I envy you. I have two left hands, as we say in German, so I'm very clumsy at doing something with my hands. Only thing I can do is type, on the computer. So I think it's great that you master these skills, and it's everybody has something, I'm not especially proud. It's also not my fault that I've done this. It's just the way my brain is structured, I guess.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
If AI is going to come and take our jobs, it's going to take yours or Mark's.
Oh, neither. It's not coming, okay. So don't worry.
Well, I think that's a big fear for people, right?
Yeah, we get into that. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see who's more future-proof. But just quickly before we start, I had a conversation with my 7-year-old, and this isn't really apropos of anything, but something that you mentioned about perpetual motion machine, that this is not possible. And my 7-year-old just the other day was like, Dad, wouldn't it be cool if you had a machine and you got like some magnets and then got them running against each other, and then they would produce electricity, and then they would keep making power and for the machine. I'm like, that's a perpetual motion machine. Yes. We've been searching for that forever. And yes. And then I read some of your works, and you said it's not possible. Yeah. So I'm going to have to break the news to him. He'll be very disappointed.
I mean, it was discovered in the middle of the 19th century by the fathers of thermodynamics, Carnot and the others, that it's not possible, right? And it's due to the second law of thermodynamics, which basically can be formulated in saying that there cannot be a perpetual motion machine. And it's unfortunate, but that's how God created the world.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I got something to tell my kid now. But okay, let's maybe define a few terms, if we can, before we start talking about AI, because I think this would be helpful to understand exactly how artificial intelligence works. So complex systems, that's one of the things that you study and teach. Can you explain to us what what a complex system is and how that relates to AI.
Yes. So basically, there are simple systems or logic systems on the one hand and complex systems on the other. Simple systems are systems that are made by humans or defined by humans, like a steam engine or another electric motor or something like this. They have regularities. Their behavior is totally regular. At least the behavior that's relevant for their function is totally regular. In nature, there are, strictly speaking, only complex systems, though some natural systems, like the solar system, seen as a gravitational system, is also a logic system. That's why the solar system also was used to initiate modern physics, because it has a lot of regularity, and the motion of the planets can be explained by the laws of motion that Newton defined. And he defined them based on observations on the movement of the planets. And so basically, there are some natural systems that are also almost logic systems. But in reality, all natural systems are complex, which means that they have irregularities that cannot be modeled mathematically. And so these irregularities come from a set of properties that have been defined in thermodynamics. The most important one, which is the science of the propagation of heat and energy. And the most important properties are, I would like to take three now to simplify it a bit. The first one is the ability of complex systems to create new element types. So a new element in the solar system would be if an asteroid gets into the gravitation range of the sun, it could circle around the sun, and it could become a new element of the solar system, like the Halley's comet, But that's only a new element. But a new element type is a new element of the system that is of a different type than the existing ones. And complex systems have the ability to create new element types, which is what evolution does all the time. So a new species is a new element type of nature. And so this is one property. Another property of complex systems is that they are non-ergodic. That means, so if this bottle of water if it's not moving and it's held at constant temperature, it's ergodic. So that means that the likelihood of the composition of the contents of the bottle or of the water is the same at every place in the water. But if I shake the bottle like this, then I get turbulence, and turbulence does not have this property anymore. So then I create a complex system which is irregular. And the third property I'd like to mention is that complex systems and this irregularity is called non-ergodicity. And it's very important to understand why we cannot build complex systems, because it's a deep form of irregularity that we cannot model. And the third property of complex systems I'd like to mention, out of the 7 that exist, is context dependent, so that simple systems are not context dependent. So if I take the solar system and move it a tenth of a light year closer to Alpha Centauri, we wouldn't notice a difference. So if I would move it very close to Alpha Centauri, the suns of Alpha Centauri and our sun would be in a gravitational field, and that would create chaos. But if I only move it a tenth of a light year, there would be no difference. That is the context-free behavior of logic systems. Complex systems are context dependent. So if you put a human being underwater longer than 6 minutes, the human is dead. So we are totally context dependent, and so are all complex systems. And the context dependency is another property of complex systems. There are more, but for the sake of that we have only 1 hour time, I will only mention those 3.
For the sake of this lecture.
Yes.
So, okay, so the human body then is a complex system.
Yes,
right?
You can even, depending on how you see it, as a whole it's a complex system, but if you go into its parts, the liver is a complex system, and then the cells of the liver are a complex system, and the molecules making up the liver cells are complex systems. So it's really a system of complex systems.
And
right.
you mentioned we can't build complex systems.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
What we can do, we can build logic systems because we can plan and engineer them. And if they run well, then they remain logic systems. Though many of the logic systems have complex system components. For example, the tires of a car, if you hit the brakes, the rubber and the road will behave in a complex manner. But by experiments, you can know how they interact, and then you can calculate the breaks, but you cannot write down the exact mathematics of the breaking process. So that's a complex event then within the non-complex system. The other interesting thing is when complex systems get out of control, like Harrisburg and Chernobyl, then they when non-complex simple systems get out of control, they become complex like Chernobyl or Harrisburg, which became complex systems when they got out of control.
Sorry, like Harrisburg, you said?
Yes, this was also an atomic plant that got out of control in the 70s.
Okay, right.
Like Chernobyl.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Chernobyl, right.
Yeah, or 3 Mile Island, or Fukushima, this kind of event.
Right, okay. And so I guess your argument is that the brain, or just human intelligence, would you label that as a complex system?
I would label it as an emanation of a complex system. So it's a product of the complex system. The complex system, which is a mind-body continuum, so it's the whole of mind and body together creates human intelligence, because human intelligence also requires a body. It's a mistake to believe it's only the brain. And this continuum creates human intelligence, or produces human intelligence. And when we look at human intelligence, we see the product of this complex system.
Right. And so, you mentioned Shaler.
Yes,
I think I
Max
pronounced
Shaler,
that.
a genius.
Yeah. And so he's new to me, but thanks to your, thanks to you. So I guess one of the things he said, that human intelligence is also instinctual or instinctive. Is that a fair?
No, he says his definition is human intelligence is the ability to respond adequately in the sense that makes sense to the individual to a totally novel situation. So if you can train yourself before executing something, like in sports or so, then it's not intelligence. Intelligence is that the situation is novel to you and that you still must react so that that your reaction makes sense to yourself, to your survival or reproduction, or something that serves ultimately survival or reproduction. And machines can never do that, because machines are always extremely carefully trained to respond to situations, right? They never react spontaneously. By definition, they cannot react spontaneously because they execute algorithms. And algorithms are always based on regularities and training. And the very definition of Shaler says that human intelligence is spontaneous, and that this is a beauty, because you can create totally novel situations and still the human, or also animals, can react in the right way. Sometimes.
So then the premise is that machines, like, we can't create intelligence artificially. Like, machines will never be able to do what humans can.
Yeah, I mean, if we could create complex systems, we could, right? Because then we could also somehow mimic the ability of human beings to react to novel situations. But we don't know how this works, right? So, and the way we teach children knowledge and so on is mostly of it is unconscious, because we just behave as the children, mimic the behavior. And somehow in this process, they train their intelligence. So they become better at adapting to novel situations, but we don't know at all how this works. Knowledge is only a tiny fraction of this. And in the end, intelligence, the degree of intelligence is inherited, and we don't know how this comes about. But there are, of course, different, degrees of being able to react to novel situations. But even the most stupid human being, with, let's say, somebody with trisomy 21, right? Can still react to some extent adequately to novel situations, and animals can as well, and this is a miracle, but we don't understand how it works, and we can't engineer it, because we cannot create this complex system that does this.
So, okay, I just want to go off the track a little bit. You're talking about children. So what, I don't know, do you have a theory on, like, what is the best way to prepare children? I mean, we have, like, learning and rote knowledge, and to a certain extent that's good. They need to memorize some things. But yeah, what kind of things would you say would best prepare children for, to deal with novel situations?
So I think that the best is to raise children in an environment that is traditional. the family and the peer group, and to give children a lot of time and freedom to behave in these groups, because most of what we learn happens in these groups.
It's short of downloading like a data set and just giving it to them. You're just immersing them in.
Yes. And then, of course, there are many layers to this. So this is the most fundamental layer. And this is what I think creates most of the educational effect. And then the school layer and all of this also create formal knowledge. But without this foundational emergence in behavior, which they just instinctively mimic, and kind of learn without thinking, like they learn a language as a child, without this exposition to social situations all the time. That's the most important thing. And you can see how strong the effect is if you compare children from families which have a high degree of education, what big advantage they have when they attend school as compared to those which are from families with low education degrees. So it's much harder for those children to get to a high level of education because all the basic skills are learned unconsciously and also taught by the parents without thinking. And then come all the other layers of education. But in the end, I think the social skills they create the values create the foundation. That's why I also, of course, think that a religious education is, of course, ideally the Christian one is ideal for children because it gives them the values that have proven in history to provide a good starting point for further development.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. That's not where I was thinking, but I mean, I agree. No. I like, yeah, absolutely. That's, sorry, that just kind of popped into my head. So, okay, but why, I just want to challenge you a little bit. Like, why is it not so Kurzweil, I think, talks about the singularity, right? And this is what I think everybody who talks about AI, everybody kind of knows. At some, we create these machines and we give them intelligence and we feed them everything that we know in the human experience. And then eventually at some point, it kind of pops it passes that and it's able to be autonomous and use its own thinking to achieve, I don't know, autonomy. Autonomy or
consciousness.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, consciousness, that's an interesting concept. So why, like, okay, you're saying we would be creating a complex system that's not possible.
Yeah, but I can go into more detail. So basically, what is running in the machine is an algorithm, and there are two basic algorithms that are used in AI. The ones are logic algorithms, which are basically based on mathematical logic, like if then else clauses or other ways to formulate logic sentences in the computer. And then this is what was called good old fashioned AI, which was the kind of AI of the 60s, 70s and 80s. It is the type of AI that beat Kasparov at chess. Right? In Big Blue, IBM's Big Blue. This is logic-based AI. And then there's stochastic AI or probabilistic AI, which is based on regression and classification algorithms. The idea was formulated at the turn of the 18th to the 19th century by Legendre and Gauss and also a Polish guy, unfortunately, whose name I keep forgetting, but he's cited in the book, who invented this kind of it works like this. You have a collection of data. Like I give you a simple example, size, weight, activity and caloric intake, and then you have body weight. Now you can create a correlation of the input variables and the output variable body weight, and you can, by using those input variables, try to predict the body weight of a person if you have the input variables. And creating this relationship mathematically is called a functional, and it's this old idea from Legendre and Gauss to do this by minimizing the least squares of the error function. And this is basically what AI is based on. So it's a statistical method to relate a set of data to another set of data. And even Google Translate functions this way. So you have a lot of English sentences, a lot of German sentences, and now you train the relationship between these. That's then not a function, but an operator, but it's the same principle. And and there's an error function that describes how good your translation is. And you are now mathematically optimizing that, minimizing the error function. And to do this, you calculate the derivative, right? We all learned this at school. And then you basically obtain a local minimum. And this then gives you the function which to use to do this. And if you have enough data, this can be exploited to find regularities in data. And that's amazing. So what AI can do today is fabulous, right? It's very surprising. And for lay people, it seems like we are now on the path to getting to AI. But in reality, we are just exploiting regularities from the data. And we can also describe where this does not work. But out of this, intelligence cannot emerge, because what is done is that is a very, very clever way to automate the description of patterns in data, of regular patterns. And so whenever there's a problem that can be formulated using regular patterns, AI is perfect. Like, for example, quality control of a manufacturing plant, because the manufacturing plant has to create the same pattern every time. That's its whole purpose. And so if you can use the data that are created there to train AI to basically find if the regularity is met. And then it's perfect at identifying manufacturing products that are not according to the rule. So this is a great example. You can also use data from the solar system and obtain Newton's equations automatically by using AI, because the solar systems movements of the planet is so regular that if you are clever, you can use them to train an AI that will recreate Newton's equations, and so on and so on. So whenever there's regularity, it works really well. But the problem is that the real world, which is populated by complex systems, has only these regularities as an exception. Now, everywhere there is this exception of regularity, you can use AI. And you can replace anything else that you had before, everything else, by AI, but only where there are these regularities. And now, if you look carefully, whenever humans get involved, there are very few of these regularities. And that's what Kurzweil and these people, they don't understand the mathematics of the AI. And therefore they extrapolate what we have achieved today to linearly to a kind of future where they believe that then spontaneously something will arise. But they don't understand the essential limitation of the AI, which is the regularity. But intelligence is actually the opposite of regularity, right? So intelligence means that you can deal with irregularities. And this in every example where there's an irregularity, AI fails. So if AI is very good at the Hamburger Wechsler intelligence test for adults, which it is now, that's because there's so much material on the internet which is related to what gets tested in the Hamburger Wechsler intelligence test. But if you put a task that is not formulated there, the AI spectacularly fails.
Yeah, and people have lots of examples of that where AI just fills in the gaps and makes up a whole study, or makes up, even with Google Translate is pretty good, and translation services, we'll use them at church, and it's a great help for people who don't speak English, but they want to come to church. But if you speak both languages and you compare the translations, you notice that the nuance is often missing, right? And I think that's what you're talking about. It's, so essentially AI is based on math, right?
Yes, completely.
It's a math, yeah, completely. And humans are not based on math.
Exactly.
So, you also work with AI, right? You're not like some guy. Yeah, you use it beneficially for cancer research, and so I just want to establish that you're not somebody who's against technology and AI.
I've been making a living off AI since 1998. So, I'm not against AI. That would be like I'm against breathing. For me, it's silly. I think AI it's applied mathematics, and applied mathematics is what I live on. It's great. I love it. Every day I have new problems where I can try to apply AI. Sometimes I can't, but it's just wonderful, and it's a big part of my life, and I love it. But it has nothing to do with human intelligence. I never call it AI in my company or with my coworkers. We always give the names of the that are mathematical. We use hierarchical clustering, or we use neural network based clustering. We don't say neural network, but we don't use the analogies that point to the human brain, which are stupid. But basically, we call the algorithms we use by their mathematical name. We use regression and then many complicated types of regression. But I'm saying that we are not calling it AI because it's not AI, but we use this technique all the time for the problems that where it's amenable to. Now, the problem is that very often in biology, there are very few problems which have this regularity. And so if you want to obtain the regularity, very often you have to create an experimental setting that produces regularity. And this is very interesting because in physics, if you think of all the experiments in physics, they are always heavily regular, like the classical experiment where you put a vacuum to a tube and then you let a pebble and a feather fall and they fall at the same speed, right? And that's a typical artificial setting. Of course, in real life, there is no vacuum. I mean, in space, there's almost a vacuum, but here on Earth, there's none. So the feather will fall much more slowly than the pebble, but in the vacuum, they fall at the same speed, and then you can establish all kinds of laws. And basically, all the quantum mechanics experiments, they work like this vacuum tube. It's always that you create artificial conditions that reduce the complexity of the problem, then you can find a mathematical equation. And if we want to do AI in biology, we do the same. We think, how can we tease out a regularity of the system? This experiment, then we do the experiment. Like I give you an example, you want to find a new antibody for cancer treatment, a variant of an existing antibody. So we create 10 million antibodies that are similar to the one we have, and we test 100,000 of them in the lab. Then we can see which one bind well to the antigen. And then we can train an algorithm exactly for this antibody-antigen pair. And then it can predict which other of the 10 million we have created virtually will also bind well. But this only works for this pair of antibody and antigen. If you have another antigen, it will not work anymore. And so this is what we have to do. We always have to create regularities, and then we can do it. And this is what many colleagues don't understand, right? Including Kurzweil, Elon Musk is not a colleague, but he's an applier of it, but he doesn't understand it at all. They all are extrapolating from what they can see immediately.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. There's so much to unpack there, but
I'm sorry.
Guess no, don't be sorry. This is what we want, because we don't understand this at all.
One thing, Mark,
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. So you said the real world is full of irregularities, and I think our listeners can wrap their heads around that, right? Because their lives, but there seems to be this temptation to suspend reality always, and we've kind of talked about that on this show a lot around, okay, you want to act like the world is not full of irregularities, that you can predict something. Mm-hmm. So is that an attitude that you're confronted with? Yes. Or is that just in the field of mathematics? No. Like
this attitude is called Cartesianism. The famous philosopher René Descartes invented this. He was the first one to formulate this as a program of research. And then Isaac Newton and all the other great physicists took it on. Then the philosophers took it on. And basically this whole attitude of trying to mimic that the world would be, something that can be packed into mathematics became very popular. And Laplace believed that if we could measure the momentum and position of all particles of the world in one moment, we could calculate back the past and the future. The Laplacian demon. And this is basically the essence of Cartesianism. And this is a tendency that has prevailed since the Industrial Revolution, because if you go to Buffalo and look at this system of exploitation of the energy of the waterfall there, right? And then you think, we can modify the world, everything can be packaged into mathematics, and we build technology. But this is only a tiny aspect of reality. And yes, to this we can do a lot with physics and technology and engineering, but we tend to overlook all the rest, right? And all the rest is 99.999%. And this does not fit into Descartes' view. And we know this since thermodynamics was discovered, because thermodynamics tells us that most processes in physics are irreversible. Like if you shatter a glass, you can't, there's no way to put it together spontaneously, right? And you need a lot of energy to put it back together, but it will not be the same again unless you melt it and recast it. And this is
what I keep trying to tell my kids.
Yes, this is irreversibility. And then the next step was quantum mechanics, where it was discovered that at the level of small particles, basically the laws of classical physics don't apply anymore. And so modern physicists know that Cartesianism is dead. It was killed in the 1920s. It started in the 1880s, but it basically in the 1920s, all the physicists agreed that classical physics is dead and that Cartesianism is dead. But engineers and the general population, which are of course 99.9%, are not theoretical physicists, right? Even more. So the general population never understood this. And that's why politicians, bureaucrats, investors, consumers, they all still believe in this Cartesian view of physics. But for theoretical physicists, it's laughable, right? And for a philosopher as well, but it is essentially Cartesianism and what came out of it, like positivism, and other branches of Cartesianism.
So the general population still kind of has their wool over their eyes a little bit.
But it's normal. I mean, think of it when the first theologians said that the dogma of the Catholic Church is broken. That was John Wycliffe in that was 1370. Then came John Hus in 1414. He was burned in Constance. It took another 100 years for the first theologian to break through this wall of silence. And then it took another, 250 years for this to really set in. So it's these processes take a long time. We always believe we are in a fast moving age, but I think it's an illusion. Humans are culturally slow, and it's still like this.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's okay, I want to get back to
my only other thought on that, Mark, was sorry. We're reading the psychology of money, and it's interesting. You talk about, you can apply mathematics to so many different areas, and you can say, okay, well, if you achieve skills in this area, you'll do better. But in the world of money and finance, so much is dictated around behavior. Yes. And that when you're talking about AI and the complexities of it and how it relates to human behavior, that's just one thing that pops in my head. Like, you can mathematically be set up for success and wealth, and then you make one wrong decision or one decision that might kind of kibosh your whole financial plan.
Yes. So so this Hayek very clearly in The Pretense of Knowledge, and before he said that basically economic systems are complex systems. That's why Soviet planning doesn't work, right? And that's why also you cannot become rich by algorithms, at least not in the long term. But rich people always exploit psychology and behavior and relationships. Right. So basically Warren Buffett is talking to the people into whom he invests, and Elon Musk is not rich because he always had for everything the best solution, but because he had relationships. Bill Gates became rich because he had this deal with IBM and so on. So this basically always psychology, knowing more than others, exploiting this, it has nothing to do with mathematics at all.
I didn't think we were going to get into Hayek on this podcast.
No, but we quote him in the book because
it's all tied together.
Because he was one of the first to use the theory of complex systems to say why social systems cannot be modeled mathematically. So he was in this. I'm not a great fan of his in every respect, but this was a fantastic insight he had.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So, I mean, so if we buy your arguments that artificial intelligence can't, by its very nature, can't exist because the complex system, yes. And the singularity won't happen, yes. And it won't be a threat to humanity, can it get close enough? Can a combination of what you refer to, I guess, clusters and the mathematical tools, can it be close enough for either a person or a government I'm thinking of China, for example, right? That's always the popular one we like to beat up on. Can it be close enough to be a threat to humanity?
So it's like the atomic bomb, The atomic bomb is a constant threat to humanity since it was developed. But it's only a threat to humanity if humans use it at a large scale, And so I'm not arguing in favor of of limited usage of atomic bombs. Don't get me wrong. But the reason I'm actually not in favor is because it can very easily lead to a chain reaction, and then we are all gone. And so the same with AI. So look at the Ukraine war. The Ukraine war on both sides, especially the defensive systems, are packed with AI. Right. And also the electronic warfare is packed with AI. The whole observation of the battlefield, integration of signals, detection of patterns, calculation of the approaching of the ballistic trajectory of an incoming missile. All this is packed with AI. And it has been since the 70s, and it's been improved every year, And this makes warfare extremely dangerous. And now offensive weapons have more and more AI. And so because AI is a powerful type of mathematics, it also lends itself to massive abuse in many areas. And that's where the problems arise. They don't arise from the machine, which only creates a string of symbols which itself doesn't understand, right? Only human beings the machine cannot understand the signals. A cat observing the printout of a computer cannot understand it. Neither can a dog or a monkey. Only humans can, and only humans can make sense of it and can utilize it. And of course, these humans can now, if you want to kill somebody with a hammer, you can kill one, people, maybe two, but then somebody will intervene. But, with an atomic bomb or with AI weapons, you can kill many more. So basically, the danger comes from the power of the tools, but not from themselves.
Okay, yeah, that is a good distinction. So, I mean, man is always the biggest threat to man.
Exactly.
Yeah, man still has his finger on the button.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
And of course, you could build, if you would really be stupid, you would build completely autonomous systems, which would then certainly make wrong decisions, right? Because the events that are fed into them are complex. And if the data that correspond to the event are novel, if the event is novel, it is certain that the machine will make the wrong decision. So AI, the error proneness of AI systems is proportional to how far the input data are away from the training data. And so because in reality, because of non-ergodic systems that create the data are always different. And then it's certain that you will get a misdecision. That's why no one is doing this, right? So that's why there's always a human in the loop. That the fleet of AI cars that are driving around on the West Coast in the US are all observed constantly by human operators, who also constantly have to intervene and stop the cars, right? These cars they are like drones. They are driving, they have an autonomous basic function, but as soon as they deviate from the desired pattern, the controller is intervening. So they are basically all the time observed. And this is the case with all quote unquote AI systems, because the real situations are so complex that the AI systems always make mistakes, and therefore they have to be humans. So in the end, yes, they're dangerous, but the danger comes from the abuse.
Yeah, interesting. I was going to ask you about self-driving cars.
Yes.
I mean, so Elon Musk or Tesla has I think the Hyperloop, or a version of the Hyperloop in Los Angeles. And I think it's just going from it's an underground tunnel that goes back and forth. And that seems to work pretty well.
Yes.
Because it's very strictly regulated.
Yes.
Like the environment is regulated. But you're saying the autonomous vehicles, they're not really autonomous.
No.
Because there's people.
Yes.
Somebody's got their finger just waiting.
It's all a big joke. I mean, they call it, it's like, I don't know, carbon-free emission car. But how is the energy made for the car? Usually also by burning coal or fossil fuels, So it's very hard to make sure that the car is only using wind turbine electricity.
Seyfried, what does Seyfried Amuse calls it? The external combustion engine?
Yes, exactly.
They do the combustion over there.
Yes. and so this is a euphemism, right? It's not a self-driving car. And what happens in those underground transportation, and there's also one on Frankfurt Airport, for example, that works very well. What did they do? They create a logic system artificially, and the human beings are forced to behave as if they were part of a logic system, and they have no choice to deviate because of the door system and everything. It's making sure that basically the human being cannot interfere with the logic system to make it a complex system, and then it works perfectly. So this is what I mean. Whenever you can create a logic system inside the world in which we live, I call this a technosphere. It's this whole collection of logic systems interacting with each other, like the water supply, electricity supply. These are all logic systems. They are complicated, but not complex. Then you can make it work. Therefore, you can use AI to optimize power usage, to optimize water usage. I mean, there are many, many great examples where you can use it, right? Yeah.
So where do you see the opportunity here for people? Like, it sounds like people will still be in control of this. Like, young people listening should get into AI and start studying, like, how to...
They should study. I think young people nowadays, it's the best in the way our societies are now evolving. It's actually good advice to study mathematics, physics, or engineering, because then you know something real. You know, or actually become a craftsman. I mean, because then you know something that is substantial. But if you study economics or law, then you are in this bureaucracy, and it's very fragile nowadays. And it's also forced to do bad things. And so therefore, yes, one should do something like mathematics, engineering, or physics. And then AI, if you do that nowadays, you automatically learn AI as a tool, because it's now everywhere in all disciplines of I just mentioned, AI is being used. And then you just learn it like you learned computer programming a generation ago. When I studied mathematics, we learned computer programming as a part of the curriculum. Now you learn AI, but it's just a tool, and you learn to use it, and it's useful like riding a bicycle, basically.
Yeah, so it sounds like the most successful AI systems, we'll call them AI systems,
yes,
or AI-based systems, are successful because of their ability to exclude turbulence, or to exclude human novel interactions. Not the actual system they build, but it's what they're excluding, which is I never thought of that. That's interesting.
Or they don't exclude, but the human is passive. Like if you get onto a train, right? You are just passive there. And
yeah.
So, but yes, it's basically exploiting regularities via building the system so that it's regular, or excluding the ability of humans to create complexity. So like a chatbot is preventing you from complexity because it's nailing you down to answering its questions, right? But if you get out of, if it's a chatbot that is used for booking something or buying something, it forces you to stay on the path for which it has been programmed. That's why it's so annoying.
Yes, I also find them annoying. So
you end up with no money at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so I want to move on a little bit then to, if we don't think, or if you don't think AI itself is an existential threat to humanity, there is a growing movement of transhumanism.
Yes,
and that is tied to. I mean, before I guess it existed before AI, but this is making it more possible. I'm thinking of, when I think of transhumanism, I think of I don't know if you know Brian Johnson, but he's trying to do all these different therapeutics and techniques to extend his life. He gets blood transfusions from his son.
He's
but
crazy.
Elon Musk also has like the Neuralink, right, which ties into your brain. Or, I'm thinking of cyborgs. Is that the right way to think about transhumanism?
Yes. So let's become a bit more fundamental. Transhumanism is rooted in eugenics. The idea that you can manipulate the human genome to obtain better humans. At first, it was thought to be done by breeding, like the original movement created by people like Gobineau, or this Englishman, I just forgot his name, who was also at the center of it. And then it became part of the Fabian Society. In Britain, it was very popular with famous people like H.G. Wells or Bertrand Russell. And then it became practiced for the first time aggressively by the Germans and the Russians during the totalitarianism. It was terrible. And then it had a renaissance in the 50s, and Julian Huxley coined the term transhumanism. And he thought that humans could be genetically altered to create, more intelligent and better humans. And then the first practice of transhumanism was, of course, the initiation of the alteration of the outer appearance of sexuality. So the gender treatment in the 60s using hormones and surgery. That was the first real transhumanist movement to say we are transcending the genetically determined sex to create a social sex, which they call gender. And this is now quite advanced. So there's a whole industry now around transgenderism and transsexuality, which is, of course, one of the main points of transhumanism. And then there are the ones that you mentioned, like creating cyborgs, improving genetic properties, digital longevity, digital immortality. These are then also all other points of transhumanism. What they all have in common is that, and goes back to Julian Huxley, the brother of Aldous Huxley, they underestimate complex systems. So they believe that with the engineering that we have applied to logic systems, we can also engineer complex systems. And that is fundamentally wrong. And therefore, the plans of the transhumanists, they don't work. So you cannot change the sex chromosomes of a man to become. So every billions and hundreds of billions of cells making up our body, all of them contain an X and a Y chromosome if you're male, and two X chromosomes if you're female. And of course, if you give some hormones and do some surgery, these cells will still keep their chromosomes. Right? So it's an illusion that you can change this. And the same goes for chips, putting chips into brains. This only works to treat in a very rudimentary form, very severe conditions. But if you have a fully functional organism, I think it's almost impossible to improve it, quote unquote, with an interface, computer interface. And I could go into why I think this is the case, but it's a bit complicated to explain, but I think essentially it's impossible. And it's even worse for genetic engineering, because we don't have a technology to engineer the human embryo without errors. But if we had, we wouldn't know what to change, because we don't even know how the features of the face are encoded, let alone, intelligence or properties of our personality. So in the end, we don't know enough about the complex systems, and I think we will never know, so that we can engineer them. Because if you want to, let's say, improve a bridge, you need to understand the mechanics and statics of the bridge. Then you can improve it and reinforce it. And then the bridge will be able to transport more, to hold more weight and so on. But if you don't understand the system, how do you want to engineer it? It's impossible. And so I think the transhumanists don't get it. And therefore, their efforts will just cause pain and suffering. And it's already happening, right? We're castrating children now. And think of once they grow up, and if they change their mind, they're castrated. You cannot reverse this. It's also an irreversible. Castration is obviously an irreversible process.
Yes, on the philosophical side, and I think this is one of the great tragedies of.
I'm going to quote you on that. Castration.
It was a joke alluding to the earlier conversation.
Who was Aldous Huxley's brother that you mentioned?
Julian Huxley.
Julian? Okay. Yeah. He was either very, very, very intelligent, more intelligent than we know, or
no, he was extremely intelligent. He and his brother believed that only geniuses are real humans, and that all the rest are not real humans. They were themselves. I don't think if they were real geniuses, but they were extremely talented. Julian Huxley created the WWF, and other United Nations organizations. So he was an early globalist and transhumanist. So he was basically one of the grandfathers of what we have today. So he was certainly an extremely talented man. I don't think he was a genius, but I think he was utterly talented, and certainly a very good Machiavellian.
Yeah, usually if somebody thinks they're a genius, they're not.
Yes.
That's your first clue.
Yes, it's like Richard Feynman said, if you think you understand quantum mechanics, then you don't.
Well, all of the stuff you're saying too just makes me stand in awe of we have a creator who actually does know all this stuff.
Yeah, and, somehow, the more I learn in my life, the more humble I become, and I'm getting more and more to, now I'm 54, I'm getting more and more to the state of Socrates, who said, I know that I know nothing, It's interesting, because you more nuances of reality you see, the more humble you become.
Yeah, and in the grand perspective of eternity, that's even more finite, right? It's not just in this life, you're 54, that's all you know, and when you pass away, but eternity, that's a long time. Yes.
So, I guess, would you say transhumanism is just an extension of Cartesianism? The idea that there's simple processes, mechanical processes, and we can. Because I think positivism comes out of that too. Yes. I think that we can control those simple processes.
Yes, this is one very important aspect of it, but culturally it's not the only one. So culturally, for transhumanism to arise, you also need total de-Christianization. So there must be no God anymore, no creation, but humans must be controlling everything. There must be also a sense of self-emancipation and self-realization, that you think that the goal in life is a radical self-realization. This is what the young Hegelians claimed in the course of the first half of the 19th century, like Max Stirner, Karl Marx, and Feuerbach. They invented this notion that you have to totally self-realize yourself. They called this emancipation and self-realization. This is also a very big element. Then there's an element of utilitarianism and control of the masses that you find in Jeremy Bentham, right? So who said that it's the highest, the best society where the sum of utility is optimized. And so on. So there are many cultural tendencies. Then there's postmodernism in this and anti-rationalism, because it's also to a large extent this belief, in eternal digital life is totally anti-rational. So you also have, it's a very interesting mixture of many cultural tendencies. Cartesianism is certainly important, but a very good Cartesian, as I used to be before I learned physics, I was in a way a good Cartesian. A good Cartesian sees already the limits of mathematics. So it's a kind of superficial Cartesianism. And so but there are many, many cultural tendencies that go into this and they feed this. And it's also, of course, a religion, because it has a sense of eternity and transcendence and so on. So it has many, many factors that are in this. It's a very complicated cultural trend.
You lost me at there must be no God. So
no, I'm saying that for them.
Yeah, I know. That's what I mean. But you're kind of everything else you said was like, well, if there is no God, then there must be all these other things too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, I mean, that's Christianity is sort of the antidote to a lot of this, right? Mm-hmm. Both in we believe that down to the core of our souls, but even in a practical sense. A material sense. If you look at the transgender movement, I mean, that just doesn't really exist in a Christian worldview, I don't think. Although some people will try to put, that love is love, or put that spin on it, but even just rationally, that doesn't make sense, right? If we
to get back to your initial question, I mean, AI is dangerous if it's abused, but transhumanism is essentially evil. It's essentially evil, because the nature of evil is that evil is directed against life. So Christianity and the good is pro-life. And every aspect of transhumanism is against life. So it's essentially an evil religion, an evil ideology. And I think that therefore it's so dangerous, and it's already causing harm now, and it will cause more and more harm. And it also plays a role in medicine, that you basically now they think that they can alter cells and the human body with mRNA substances that they want to inject to change us and all of this. And they think of thematic gene therapy, of changing the genome and the way the genome is used by the cells, using pharmacotherapy. All of this is also part of transhumanism. It doesn't help anyone. It's creating a lot of harm and pain. And so I think transhumanism as an overall ideology is already now, creating a lot of pain and harm for humanity. And that's why and AI is only a part of it, right? It's also, of course, a lot of hubris, right? The idea that we can become like God. We know, of course, that this won't work, but it's also a big hubris is in there, and narcissism.
Yeah. It's
how do we combat that?
I think this is very good. I mean, how do you combat something? What did Jesus Christ do? He combated some ideas, right? He talked about them. He said, no, the Sunday was invented for us and we were not invented for Sunday. Right? It's quite a trivial sentence. I mean, he would say Shabbat, but you know what I mean, right? So basically he was saying, a lot of what he was saying was rather simple, but really to the point. And I think this is why I'm giving such interviews and why we are having such discussions, because I want to tell the people how the things are, tell the truth. And that's the only way to do it. And by doing this, these ideas will spread. And because our ideas are right, I mean, right in the sense that they are rooted in better values and they are closer to reality, at some point they will prevail. It's always like this in history, that bad ideologies don't prevail, but while they exist, they can cause a lot of harm.
Yeah, so we can suspend reality for as long as we can until it hits us in the face.
Yes. So Bertrand Russell says that politicians can lie for quite a long time, again, in his book Power, which I can recommend to you. They can lie for a long time to the population. They can even lie against the laws of nature, he says, but at some point, the population will pick up sticks and beat the politicians to death. He writes, right? And I'm not asking anyone to be beaten to death, but I'm saying that he wants to say that you cannot, go against the natural truth forever.
Yeah. There's a limit to the suspense of reality.
Yes. Wow. Okay. There's a lot of food for thought there, Jobst, and more than we could have hoped for. So that is great. We're coming up to the end of our time, though, and do you have any final thoughts or anything that we missed or that we should expand on a little bit that you can think of? Yes, or Brent, same for you.
Yeah, I think what I would like to repeat is that what everyone can do, no matter what their education is, one should always, and that's also true for AI and transhumanism, but many other topics that are fashionable, to try to weigh what we are being told against what we can observe with our own eyes in reality. And with reality, I don't mean what's going on the screens that we are carrying with us all the day, but really what's going on in the social reality of people interacting in nature, and to just observe this, And if you are skiing and you see the wind blowing through the snow, you see a pattern that is ever changing. It will never be the same pattern on the same mountainside. The pattern will always be different depending on the conditions. This turbulence, right? You can see it when the waves are coming to the shore. And if you just have to look at this, and then you can compare this to what we're being told, and then you realize, the beauty of creation and how little we know, and then you become more humble and more realistic.
I'm going to have to tell my wife I got to go snowboarding and I got to go surfing.
Yes,
so.
It's great. That's what you should do.
That's Lugano. You teach in Lugano?
Yeah,
that's
I always ski after teaching.
Okay.
Wow.
Do you like Lugano better than New York or Buffalo? Or?
So I'm a European. So what do you want me to say? I like Manhattan from time to time. But Western New York State is certainly nice. I like the students. I like to be there from time to time. But of course, I'm a real European. I can't help it.
Well, we're both of Dutch background, so we would expect you to be very direct in your answer, the same way that Dutch people are.
And usually and speaking of Switzerland, Lugano is good, but I must say I prefer the more northern part of Switzerland, the French and German speaking, because I don't speak Italian that well, but the University of Lugano is a great place to work.
Isn't it all the people from Italy there? Like they just commute over the border?
So a lot of students are really. It's the only university. It's the only university of the Italian-speaking part of Switzerland. So I think there are a lot. So therefore, there are students from there. Then there are some students from Italy, but it's also very international. So they have international programs. They're teaching English. So there are students from all over the world. Like that's pretty much the case everywhere in the West. But it's a great place.
Yeah,
I gotta ask you about Bitcoin, but we got 1 minute left. Mark's laughing, but I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on Bitcoin?
Yes, I think that it was a very interesting experiment, but I think that it's coupled to the financial system we have, and I think the financial system we have will collapse. I don't know when, but it must be, because it's so over indebted and it's so dysfunctional. And then Bitcoin will collapse. So you can still play with Bitcoin, but if you want to preserve a bit of your wealth, then I suggest real estate, gold, and silver, and platinum.
Yeah, something external from the financial system,
and that you can physically own, because the financial system, everything that is denoted in units of the financial system, is bound to not to vanish, but to get into a massive turbulence. Sooner or later, and therefore it's always good to have some of your wealth, if you have some wealth, in physical units. That's my advice on the Bitcoin.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, we always have to ask that. So, we didn't touch on the Roman Empire today. That's usually the other one we like to talk about, but maybe another time.
Yes.
Okay, Jobst, where can people I don't know. What's the best way for people to interact with you? Do you want that, or should they just buy your book?
Yeah, they can buy the book, which will have a second edition soon. It will come out in May. So maybe they should wait until May to get the second edition, because there are new chapters in it, which is much better. I think it's a very improved version, and it's also great sign of success that we have a second edition. I can be found on LinkedIn. I am also on Google Scholar. There you can find most of my works. And I'm on Twitter also. I think the account is called AI Without Fear, like the subtitle of our book. But I'm not, all the social media I don't use so much. But you can, if you Google me, you can find and contact me, and I'm glad to receive emails from readers. And I don't get too many of them, so I usually respond, and it's always a pleasure to me.
Okay,
and if you want to go skiing, you gotta hit up Switzerland.
Yeah, so I just came from Switzerland. I was skiing in Grindelwald, which is in the vicinity of Bern, which is but there are many great regions. But yes, I always go to Switzerland to ski since I'm half Swiss.
There you go, folks. Buy real estate in Switzerland. That's the okay.
Thanks a lot for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Jobst. I really enjoyed this. And we'll wrap it up there. So to our listeners, thank you so much for coming on this journey with us. And until next time,
steward your wealth wisely. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Two Stewards Show. If you like my voice better, click subscribe.
If you like my voice better, click share.
If you like both, give us a 5-star rating.
To learn more about the show, head on over to twostewards.ca and explore our free resources. To interact with the show, feel free to reach out at hello@twostewards.ca.
We will see you in the next episode. In the meantime, steward your wealth wisely.
Nailed it.